Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Dead Man Walking podcast. I am your host, Repeatedly Dead Fred, author of the medical trauma memoir, The Summer I Died 20 Times, which is what actually happened to me. And that's how I got the ridiculous name, Repeatedly Dead Fred. Today, I have a Canadian star, playwright, author, actor, director, producer as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, some guy named Bobby Del Rio. Hi,
yeah.
Bobby. Thanks for
Hi,
coming
how are
on.
you? Thanks for having me.
Good.
Appreciate
So, I was reading a little bit about you, and for a young guy, you've done a lot. Like, did you intend to be an actor?
it. Yeah, I mean, I think I maybe look a bit younger than I am,
Hmm.
but I definitely always knew I wanted to be an actor. I mean, ever since I was, 6 years old. So
Hmm.
yeah,
So you did all the school stuff and everything.
yeah. I was like a drama club dork in high school, and I was the
Yeah.
lead in all the plays. I mean, I don't know, like my whole life. I don't actually have any memory before. You know what I mean? Like I was always kind of selected to like read everything in class and to be the lead in the plays and
Hmm.
assemblies. Just my whole life. And then I went to theater school. So
Hmm.
I went to UTM / Sheridan College Theater and Drama Studies program, and we trained in Shakespeare and many other performance styles. And then I became an actor. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I heard you started off getting or your major start was as a playwright.
Yes. So while I was training to be an actor professionally,
Mhm.
um, I started writing plays. So I remember I was in some student written plays. The program over at Arundel, like the University of Toronto, Mississauga, really encouraged like self-driven content, right? So
Mhm.
it was amazing. I was just there trying to learn how to get in movies and commercials and stuff, and then I would be cast in plays that were written by people my age, and I was like, "What? I didn't know you could write a play."
Mhm.
So I just started, I don't know, writing my own plays, just like my peers were doing. And then while I was in school, I did a play called When Children Fall,
Mhm.
and we were submitted to the University of Toronto Drama Festival, which was like at U of T. There's all these different colleges,
Mhm.
and I guess they have like a festival for plays, and then I ended up winning the playwriting award, which I didn't even know existed. Um, and then I won this playwriting award, the Robertson Davies Playwriting Award, and I was like, oh, am I a writer now? Like it was very
Mhm.
unexpected. So then I started learning how to write plays more and more, and then it had a really big impact on my career.
Mhm. So it sounds like your theater school was almost like a DIY program.
Yeah,
You
like I
create
think
your own
actually,
content.
we've had a few like really prestigious playwrights, directors, producers come out of that program. We've had a lot of like actors as well, but
Mhm.
um, it was a pretty good program because there's a lot of academics as well as practical studio time for acting. So
Mhm.
you had people like me. There are a lot of multi-hyphenates, right? Where like I've had a pretty good acting career, but also I've had a pretty, like respected playwriting career. I've written many hits and published a bunch of things, and then also moved into screenwriting and making movies and stuff. And that definitely all came from the theater and drama studies program. We were highly encouraged to make our own work there.
Mhm. How different is it writing a screenplay from uh, a a, a play?
Yeah,
Sorry, a script, like a movie script from
yeah,
a
yeah. No, I know
or
what
a
you mean.
TV script. Yeah.
Well, okay. My first feature was almost the exact same script. I just cut and pasted it. Um,
Mhm.
it's funny, it depends who you ask. I do think that there's a lot of people in the screenwriting world who kind of make it seem like it's this really like difficult thing where you need, a degree in engineering to possibly create the blueprint of a story. But um,
Mhm.
I actually think it's quite similar. I mean, obviously in a play, you're not writing in, interior, exterior, names of locations, day or night. But I find them pretty similar. I mean, there's certainly some plays that are very nonlinear,
Hmm.
that can take very odd forms. But honestly, like even in film, there's a lot of screenplays that can take you to weird places. So I don't know. I think they're way more similar than people realize. And having done both, like the transition from playwriting to screenplay to screenwriting was essentially just tabs.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've read stories that there's a lot more hijinks that goes on in live theater than there is on some movie sets. When
Mm.
people have to go towards the sides of the play to make it look like they're walking off screen, and the other actors or people involved will sort of do some little pranks on them. I guess it depends on the production.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think the difference is that theater's live, right, in front of a live
Hmm.
audience, and so I mean, I've done a lot of movies and TV shows now. There's a lot of jokes that happen on set as well, but the difference is that the
Hmm.
stakes are pretty low. Like I don't know if you were. I mean, I don't do things like that, but I guess if you were to like play with somebody's wardrobe and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I'm
Hmm.
wearing Edgar's costume or whatever. Like
Hmm.
if it was a film, you would just be like, all right, well, cut, like go wear the right outfit, right?
Yeah.
But if it's a play and it's like someone swaps out, your costume, and now you're
Hmm.
wearing a bra or something that you didn't have to, and then now you have to perform a 4-minute monologue. There's not really a way to pause, be like, "Hey guys, just so you know, I'm wearing the wrong." Like it's like like the pressure of and immediacy of the audience. It really increases the stakes, right?
Hmm. Yeah, one of the stories I read was somebody swapped out uh, one of the performer's contact lenses,
Right.
and then she went on and she was essentially blind and couldn't see her way around the set.
Oh yeah, I mean, you hear all these stories. I've done theater for a long time. I haven't actually done theater for a while, but that was the first,
Hmm.
10 years of my career, right?
Hmm.
And you hear all these stories about the older generations of theater, and even things like people would perform entire plays like hammered, like they would just be drunk and
Hmm.
perform Shakespeare, and you're like, what? Like some of the things that I don't know if it was like a bit of a machismo competition. It was, I mean, because there's mostly
Hmm.
men as well working. Um, like the things that performers used to do back in the day, based on what I've heard from actors I've worked with. I mean, you would just never get away with stuff like that today.
Hmm. I'm sure, and it was a different time, and people didn't pay as much attention to mental health and fitness and things of that nature. So, um,
Yeah, it's definitely
Rob.
fun though. I mean, I will say, like, even just as a performer, there's something about getting in front of a large group of people where anything that can go wrong does go wrong,
Mhm.
and just pulling it off. It's quite exhilarating.
Yeah. I think that's why when I was young and I used to watch the Johnny Carson show with my parents, the things we enjoyed most is when the show went off the rails,
Right, right, right. Yeah.
and that's why I like to keep this show unscripted to see, what's gonna fall out. Um,
Oh yeah. There was one time. I mean, it's not. I don't know how funny it is, but it's just to show you like what the stakes are quite high. I remember I was doing a play. I'd written a play, and I played the lead role. It's called Professionally Ethnic. In
mhm.
2017, it was a big hit at Summer Works, and I remember I was doing a monologue, and a light above me
Mhm.
fell right beside me. Like it was like
Wow.
right beside, and I kind of just moved out of the way, and it was like it was pretty, like, I think about it at the time. I just saw that and I just took a step away. I was like, okay, well, but I thought back. I was
Mhm.
like, oh my god, like if that was 6 inches to the right, that's my head, man.
Yeah.
You know,
And those things
it's
are like
just it's
100 pounds or
fully.
something, right?
I mean, I didn't weigh it or anything, but it was like heavy, and
Mhm.
it's crazy that, like, I think back, I was like, oh man, like I guess it would, like, you, right? I guess it's like
Mhm.
the play where I died 20 times.
Mhm.
I don't know, but yeah, that happened.
So what was the audience reaction to that?
They didn't even have a reaction. It happened so fast, and I had no reaction because I get so tapped in that I literally
Hmm.
just like took a step to my right and continued the monologue like nothing happened, right?
Hmm.
But actually, what had happened is I almost died on like
Hmm.
live in front of everyone. Yeah.
Hmm. And I guess the audience just thought that was part of the play.
Yeah, they probably thought, oh yeah, that part with the light, that was kind of weird. But I had no reaction, right? Like,
Hmm.
because things always go wrong in theater, right? I mean, not all the time, but often, and
Hmm.
the audience doesn't know the show. So there's an expression, like a term called corpsing, right? In
Hmm.
theater. And I don't know if you know the term. But corpsing is basically just when you break, right? You break character. And so professional actors very rarely corpse, especially in theater because things are going wrong all the time. But if if something does go wrong and you're like, oh wow, that's when the audience is like,
Hmm.
oh my god, something went wrong. But they'll never know something went wrong unless you kind of
Hmm.
like prove it to them. You know what I mean?
Hmm. When I was professoring, in business school, a lot of what you have the students do is presentations and
Mm.
learning to do presentations to their future bosses, whoever. And I would always tell them, nobody knows what you're actually supposed to say. Like
Right.
if you stumble and go from point one to point three, nobody knows that except you.
Hmm.
So just keep going.
Yeah,
And
and it helps in film and television as well because, like in Cat's show, right? Polly is the new
we
monogamy, which
should
we're
talk
promoting
about
right
that.
now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's please talk about it. But like there were some scenes like we were allowed to improvise, you know,
Mhm.
and so there were things, if like Cat made a joke or I made a joke in the moment, you just go with it. You don't stop because you don't really know, are they going to use it? Are they not going to use it? And that comes from theater where like I remember doing a play once and there was like 10 of us in the play and it was like a one night only performance. And I don't know whose mistake it was, but somebody made a mistake 3 pages in where we went right to the last page. And then we all kind of realized the play's about to be over and we haven't performed it yet. So then we had to
Mhm.
like go backwards to the point where we think we missed and then move back to the point that we had just done. But then when that
Mhm.
came, we had to like change the plot point because we can't just do the same scene that we already did. So it was a very strange thing, but it really does train you that whatever happens, keep going.
Yeah, a little more improv-y, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Have you done any improv?
Yeah, I did 10 levels of Second City on scholarship.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and in high school I actually had done more improv than actual, sort of like theater.
Hmm.
But then we should have did both. But I did years of improv before I really started focusing on text.
Okay. So let's talk about Polly.
Sure, please.
How did that come to be?
Honestly, like I wish I could be like I trained at the finest schools in the world to perform the role of Tommy.
Hmm.
But actually, Kat, who's the creator of the show, is one of my best friends, and she literally just wrote the role for me.
Hmm.
And one day she was like, "Oh, I wrote a new script, and I wrote a role for you based on you, and you're gonna play it." And I was like, "All right,
That's a level of enthusiasm I haven't seen in a long
yeah,
time.
yeah, exactly." No, it was great. It's been great. We're on a wild ride, and there's so much attention and publicity and everything. But it's so funny because it was very anticlimactic for me. Like a lot of people have
Mhm.
really like dramatic stories about how they got the role or whatever. And but
Mhm.
yeah, no, she literally just like wrote it for me and was just like, oh yeah, I wrote a role for you.
Yeah,
You're gonna play it. I was like, okay,
it's not like one of these stories where you've got, agent was calling me and I only had one bar and like 2%
right.
battery left, and you
Yeah,
know,
no, there's no drama whatsoever. It's so boring. And yet, I mean, the role is, I don't know, maybe the best. role of my career, maybe. I don't know. I mean, certainly for TV. I mean, I'm one of the leads in the show, and we're getting all the publicity in Canada. We're starting to get some real publicity in the United States. But it's so funny how, I've worked for so long and I have lots of stories about how I got the part and this and that. Like the one bar, like I've got stories like that. This is not that. This is like my friend just wrote me a role. And but also, she knows me so well. And, I think partly she's been a big advocate of my talent. And she knew the best way to have me shine, and kind of just, I don't know, she just decided that she would give me that opportunity. I'm really grateful for it.
Do you know where Kat got the idea for the show?
Yeah, look, I know. So it's funny. I've known Kat for years, and the first short film that she made was a little short film called Three's a Crowd, and it's a very simple film, but still to this day is my favorite Kat Hosted film, right? And it's just a little film about this guy who's like cheating on his girlfriend, but then the girl who he's cheating with and his partner randomly meet or something, like in a grocery store, and then they decide to play a prank on him, right? But I think she's just always been fascinated with like the sort of games people play in relationships, and people who, they kind of play around, but it's like funny, and they conspire to like, kind of turn the tables. And I think that I know her favorite film, I believe one of them is Catch Me If You Can, with Leonardo DiCaprio, where he plays a con artist. So I think that she's very like playful, and I think she's been very interested in the idea of the games people play in relationships. So then years later, after watching Three's a Crowd, in my mind, Polly is the New Monogamy is almost like a TV version of that short film.
Okay. I think there's an entire Reddit subthread on stories like this, of people getting into weird relationships, and then the people aren't what they see. And then, it's
very contemporary, and I think that, Kat's a bit younger than I am. I think for especially the millennial generation, I think like dating apps and everything, I think it's created a bit more sort of gameplay. I think that in my generation, a title, Polly is the New Monogamy, I think people would be like, what are you talking about? That's so crazy, But I think for millennials and Gen Z, for younger generations, I think it's common, right? I think what Kat does really well in the show, I think, is she minds the complexity of relationships, and how there's so many different types of relationships these days in the romantic arena. And I don't know, all of them are valid, but all of them are also quite different.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing dating apps really spurred is cat fishing. So
right.
There you go. So I guess the title of the series is sort of a play on the Orange is the New Black, right? Sort of that same.
Yeah, I guess I get, in a way, it's this idea that things are not as they appear.
So have you filmed the entire season yet, or how many episodes?
Yeah, so actually we had filmed all 6 episodes during the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was an independently made TV show, and at the time, I remember, I thought it was going to be a web series, like short form, and then I don't even know if I made that discovery on set, because at that point I had already read previous drafts, and I was really just memorizing my lines for my part. But at some point, it occurred to me that these are 6 half hours. And I had read the first draft, and I didn't think that it was that long. And I guess Kat had added to it. And I was like, oh, this is like a full-length television series. This is like a 6-episode television series. But anyway, so we shot it during the pandemic. And then, it was indie, right? So it took a couple years to get it made and, make the tweaks. And Kat's been a busy director, so she was kind of like getting to it when she could. But then, I don't know, we've gotten so much attention this summer, not just in Canada, but internationally, especially in the US, that I go, it's something really special. And now there's a lot of interest in the season 2. So there's a lot of people who are very interested in making more.
That'd be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, what were the challenges of shooting during the pandemic as opposed to a non-pandemic shoot?
So I had actually, I've been rep by the best agents in Canada my whole career.
Mm.
And I stopped auditioning during the pandemic. Now, partly it was I'd become very popular on this app called Clubhouse, which was
Mhm.
pretty much the hottest app in the world, and I became one of the most popular personalities in the world, right? So it was crazy. That's how I broke into Hollywood. I became national news in Canada. All this crazy stuff happened, right? So I was
Mhm.
on that all the time because it was a new way to reach an international audience for me.
Mhm.
But at the same time, to be perfectly honest, I was pretty worried about performing as an actor during COVID. Not everybody was like they actually shot a lot of stuff during COVID, but for me, I just felt like I don't know, it's a bit dangerous.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stories actors would show up on set and they had COVID, and then all of a sudden, like all hell broke loose.
Mhm.
Um, but like Kat is one of my best friends, so also it's a role written for me, based on me. So I was like, okay, well, I'll come out. And there were times I had to come in last minute because something got changed right at the last minute because of COVID, right? Things went
Mhm.
wrong. So I just, to be honest, like a big part of why I did the show was for Kat, right? Was to help her out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Even though it is a good opportunity for me, it was also like, well, I had been encouraging her to make the show for years because I knew how good it was, right? But it was a bit. I was a little bit scared to perform during COVID because it's like we'd be wearing masks everywhere in life, and then
Mhm.
just before we go on and we would rehearse or something, and it's like, okay, take the mask off, and so it was this almost this weird scenario. I mean, everybody was super professional. We did everything by the book, but
Mhm.
definitely like the moment you take your mask off in a world where that was almost forbidden. I mean, you remember how it was, right? It was like
Mhm.
2 years, right? But when you're an actor, we're not wearing masks in the scene, right?
Mhm.
But basically, up until you're being filmed, you're in this mask. So then it's like you take it off, and you're like, it's like being naked in front of your mom or something like that. I made
Well,
that really weird. I don't know why your mom has to be there, but yeah.
speaking of being naked, I mean, this isn't like a traditional TV set where somebody's just doing a comedy and people are just talking. Like
Right.
there are scenes where the actors are getting intimate, uh,
Very so, huh.
which is even crazier during COVID. So,
Yeah, and I mean, you really have to trust your scene partners, because like there's a difference between what people say they're doing at home and what they're actually doing. So God forbid somebody
mhm.
had COVID and gave it to another actor during a love scene or something. I mean, I don't have any love scenes, but a bunch of people do. But like, thankfully, there are no stories of anybody getting COVID. But
Mhm.
especially during that time, it was a bit like it was a bit harrowing. It was. I remember being a bit worried. Yeah.
Mhm. I know I had COVID probably 5 times. I mean, my first one was I got
Right.
really, really hammered. And, the doctor says, like, I'm not even going to test you anymore. We'll just call whatever you have COVID, just
Oh goodness,
stay away and, you know, in
that must have
7 to
been
10
pretty
days.
terrifying, though, right? I mean, because they're not really
Yeah.
doing their job at that point, right?
Well, I think a lot of people were trying to do their jobs and they really didn't know what the job was anymore.
Hmm.
And a doctor friend of mine recently told me the tests we were using for COVID weren't even designed for COVID. They were designed for like SARS from, a decade ago or whenever that was.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
they weren't even, they were telling people they had COVID when they didn't, and, false positives, false negatives. And,
Right. Right. Right.
you know, the vaccine worked for some people, it didn't work for others. So,
No, I remember it was just such a weird time, right? That's why I was like, I don't really know who to believe and what's true, but I just was like, I'm not shooting anything during this time. I don't know what's going on, but the safest thing is for me just to stay in my room.
mhm.
Luckily, Clubhouse gave me an international platform, so that helped. But I am glad that I did leave my room to come to set for Polly because the show's been pretty successful.
Oh, good. So is Clubhouse like a private Twitter or like
So Clubhouse is
celebs?
not it's still around, but it's not what it was. It's a fraction of
Mhm.
what it was. But essentially, it was like almost like live podcasting. So it was audio only. It was almost like doing a
Mhm.
live radio show with people around the world. But
That
it
sounds
because
fun.
yeah, it was pretty cool, and I somehow became very good at it. Because I never really done radio.
Mhm.
But I was, a seasoned performer. So to perform, I was essentially performing live without being seen.
Mhm.
But what made it very powerful is that it was knee deep in the pandemic where you weren't really allowed to leave your home. Like, if you
Mhm.
remember, you weren't really allowed to see your friends or your family. Like, I think in
Yeah.
Ontario, like we had like certain bubble. I don't know what the hell they were called, like circles where you were allowed to see four people, and if you saw beyond that, you could go to prison or whatever they. I don't know what the
Mhm.
consequences were, but they seemed quite dire.
Yeah, we're
So
going to take you from that bubble where you're not allowed to see people and put you in a jail
right.
where you have no distancing from
Right,
anyone.
right. I didn't understand what's happening, but I was like, fine, whatever. But what was interesting about Clubhouse was that because no one essentially was allowed to leave their homes, at least in North America, I'm pretty sure worldwide, but certainly in North America, um, there wasn't really a way to socialize with people. And then
Mhm.
Clubhouse came along, and all of a sudden, it's like you could make friends, you could go to parties, you could hang out with people, you could make friends with people all around the world. And
Mhm.
for whatever reason, there was a very large Hollywood contingent on this app. I met my
Mhm.
agent on the app, who I still have to this day. Um, and there was a bunch of celebrities and Hollywood executives and producers and financiers and all around the world. And we were almost like locked in this sort of like resort together for
Mhm.
months, and the relationships I built on that app. I mean, even just this week, like some people I met on Clubhouse are like helping me out with my show and helping me out. And like when I was in LA for 8 months last year, like you bring me to parties and all kinds of
Mhm.
stuff to help me. And I track that back, and it's like, oh man, because I built really strong friendships during the pandemic on Clubhouse.
Very interesting. So
Mhm.
if people want to find Polly, where's it being broadcast?
So in Canada, we're exclusively on Hollywood Suite. So that's a
Okay.
streamer. So I think there's different ways to sign up, but essentially, it's kind of like a Netflix, but it's for Canada. And I believe Holly's the first show that they've acquired, like an original television series.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and that's the best way in Canada. And in the US, we are now on Tubi in the US, and we're also on Prime Video, Amazon Prime.
Okay. Awesome. So before we started recording, we talked a bit about your looks.
Oh
And I
yeah.
said, you looked like you were biracial of some sort.
Mhm.
And I'm not quite. I mean, if you just go by your name, it's probably an Italian name, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you're good. You're very good.
Yeah.
You're a
Works.
detective in one of your previous lives, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
mm.
what are you and how has that affected your ability to get roles?
I actually wrote a long Facebook note about this the other day.
Mhm.
Um, it's called I'm half Chinese, half Italian. Okay,
Okay.
and so it's funny because actually in the early days of my career, I would be cast as Latino or Aboriginal or
Mhm.
different. Like people would kind of look at me and be like, "Oh, I guess you could pass for this," and I'd be cast in that. But now it's so funny because the industry has changed so much that um, authenticity and representation is such a big issue, as it should be, where people want people who are authentically from certain cultures to play the roles that represent them on screen,
Mhm.
which I advocate and I respect, but also in a way kind of screws me because
Mhm.
they don't write roles for Chinese Italians, because it's so weird and niche, right?
Mhm.
So it's actually been a bit problematic for me. Now, luckily, especially because of Clubhouse, I've built a pretty big profile internationally. So because
Mhm.
of that, like my name has essentially transcended my ethnic origin.
Mhm.
So I'm in another series as well right now called Open Source that I host. It's all about technology, and
Mhm.
I get offers to essentially be me, right? So Cat writing a role for me is, incredibly generous, but almost like in a way my only option. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, if you're only going to cast people who are full Asian or full Italian or
Mhm.
actually authentically Latino or indigenous, like I understand the need for that and I do respect that. But for me, who's someone who's mixed race,
Mhm.
it's really difficult to like be considered for anything then, right? Because then the roles are okay. Well, they go like, oh well, the Asian people, you got your roles, and you know native people, you got your roles. And so then the white community is like, okay, well, we've got ours. And so I'm in the middle of none of these things. And
Mhm.
so in a way, my only chance is to build relationships with people who know who I am or like me as a person and give me
Mhm.
an opportunity. But it's actually been quite challenging.
Yeah, the show Agents of Shield, one of the stars, I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but I guess people can IMDb her.
Hmm.
Her mom, I believe, is white, and her father is full Chinese,
Oh,
and
good.
she's gorgeous. Couldn't I would have had no idea she was biracial, but she said she had to change her name, get rid of her father's surname to start getting roles. She had to Americanize herself, I guess.
Yeah, like it's a weird situation. Like what I'm hoping is that especially in the last few years, the industry's really changed where it's become a little bit antagonistic between different cultures,
Mhm.
and it's unfortunate for me. First of all, I'm like a product of a mixed race household, so I just see everybody as a human being. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
we're just living, and people have different foods that they like and languages that they speak, but I don't really see a
Mhm.
difference between people. But certainly others don't feel the way I do, and so it's some people are really fighting with other people. So what I'm hoping is the fights kind of come to an end, and then we can all
Mhm.
get back on the same page, and then it should hopefully become a thing where the best actor gets the role, the best
Mhm.
writer gets their script made. Uh, right now, I don't know if that's the case. Like it's kind of a contentious time in the film and television industry where I think what's happening is people are just trying to figure out, well, how do you respect people's cultures, but also create a model of meritocracy, but also acknowledge historical injustices, but also acknowledge that not everybody in the present day was participating in those injustices. So I
Mhm.
I think what's happening is it'll figure itself out because we realize, you know what? Why don't we all just get drunk together and then like drunkest person passes out and then they're
Mhm.
eliminated. Like I think that's the solution.
Yeah, I think this is happening in most industries across the world, and um, the DEI thing has sort of, not to get political and uh, in that realm, but it's way overcorrected, and it's coming
Yeah.
back towards the meritocracy. And you shouldn't totally eliminate DEI because there are some groups that are really, really underserved and could use a boost. But to make everything about DEI, I think was a big mistake, and uh,
Yeah,
we're
look, and
seeing
it's
it.
challenging, and I'm in the middle of everything, and I've been an anti-racism political activist for decades, but it's so funny because my whole thesis is actually quite provocative today. My thesis is like, hey, like we're all the same, like let's be friends, like a pretty simple. But now it's
Yeah,
like, no, 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 that's the problem. You're the problem. It's like, what do you mean I'm the problem? Like this. Anyway,
yeah,
I don't want to get into all the politics of everything, but I think
yeah.
that I hope that people are doing it because they're very passionate about creating opportunities for their communities, and they should be, and everyone
Mhm.
deserves to be part of society. But I think that you can still be part of society without identifying enemies, and
Yeah.
what
Just don't
I've
be a
learned.
dick.
Right, 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 right. But I think that if you start to see that, I think I think genuinely a lot of people are doing their best, and this has been a big shift for me philosophically from my 20s to my 40s now.
Mhm.
Is that you know what? If I really take a look at people, and instead of like looking at them and being like, oh well, you're this race and this gender and this sexuality, this means this about you, and instead being like, hey, like let me just take in dead Fred right now. And what do you mean he died 20 times? What? It's like
Mm.
people, I okay, maybe there could be another white guy, but guess what? He probably wasn't murdered 20 times in the summer or what. So obviously people are very different on a case by case
Mhm.
basis. So I just think I think people are doing their best, but I think what we need to do is start taking people in as individuals. And then I think that the defenses will come down and we can really just start to build a complex community, because I think that's what's needed.
I think that's an excellent place to end our talk because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
And I'm fully on board with everything you've just said. So, Bobby, thank you so much for coming on. And
Thanks for
is
having me.
anything really quickly you need to plug?
I mean, look, check out Polly's the new Monogamy. We're on Hollywood Suite in Canada. We're on Tubi and Prime Video in the US. And I'm hosting a technology series called Open Source on News Forum in Canada.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to everybody who's tuned in, thank you very much for tuning in to the Dead Man Walking podcast. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment, share, all those things. Get me as famous as Bobby and have yourselves a wonderful week. Thanks.